Hey, today is a really special episode because I am interviewing one of my amazing clients named Elizabeth. I had to interview her because she was that student who had the six-figure launch recently. And I was like, I've got to interview her so you can hear the breakdown of exactly what she's done as an independent, self-published author. And if you're not an author, I want you to pay just as much attention to this as anything else because it's about the framework and it's about the principles and it's about what she's applied through the coaching program. Elizabeth is absolutely going to knock your socks off. So, having said that, enjoy this interview and take notes. Elizabeth Wheatley, the most amazing author that I personally know and have met, especially in the fiction space. I have so many questions for you because you are one of my star students that, this program I've launched, Legacy Launchpad, it's not even a year old, but you've known me for a bit longer than that. So I would love to just introduce you to my audience and let everybody know what you're doing. They can go follow you. But tell us a little bit about yourself and your background in writing. How did you get started? How long have you been writing? What led you to get into the fantasy romance genre and all of that?
So I started writing when I was like 11 and then really bad Chronicles of Narnia fan fiction. And I published my first book when I was 15. I really liked the old school epic fantasy books like Tad Williams, Brandon Sanderson, The Wheel of Time, but I wanted to have more kissing in it. So I just basically write high fantasy settings and then I just make it or center on a romance. I've been told that it has a lot of world building, like a lot of political intrigue in it, but that's the summation of what I write.
Okay, and when did you self-publish your first book?
June 30th, 2011. I was 15.
Okay, well, ambitious. I love that. And there's a lot of teens, even my daughters are at that age where they're starting to get into a little bit of writing themselves, don't know how serious they're going to take it. But I love that you followed all the way through completion and you didn't just write something, you actually put it out there for the world, which that's huge credit in my opinion. Like I think that's amazing when a teenager does something like that. What happened after that? How many people read it?
I not many. It was my first book. I think it was a young book. I matured a lot as a person and as a writer, and I think by the time when I was 18, I started working on what would become this series, the Dangerous Assassin series. That one changed a lot. My other books changed a lot, and I was a baby when I wrote that first book. It didn't do well, but, like, I understand why.
Absolutely. Well, and that's just part of a natural, progression of any artist, right? So myself as a musician, my first album, yeah, I have some cringe moments for myself. Like, and this is just you just accept it, right? It's like, yes, this is. I think even I've heard Brandon Sanderson refer to, yeah, my first book or whatever. Everyone's a bit embarrassed about the things they put out in the world, but it's like, if you don't do it ever, how are you ever going to improve? Like that's part of it. So I already detect because I'm looking for success patterns and clues. And in you, I already detect that you're willing to put stuff out, even if hey, I'm gonna evolve and it's about not being an absolute perfectionist. But where would you put yourself on the perfectionism scale?
Oh, I used to care about perfectionism a lot more than I do now. I read a book that said get it to 80% and then go. I think it was a Seth Godin book because you're the only one who's going to care about the last 20%. So I started just forcing myself to do that. I don't think I'm a perfectionist. I like to do good work, but I wouldn't say I'm a perfectionist by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, this
Um,
is really important for people to hear that because that actually, success leaves clues. I'll say that time and time again. There's one of them, right? It's 80% good enough. And by the way, this is also the mindset to have whenever you have employees and you're hiring people. If they do it 80% good enough, you should sing hallelujah because that's actually amazing. Nobody's going to do anything quite as good as you, and even ourselves, we hold ourselves to this super unrealistic standard, and so if we're at 80% of that, it's actually probably really good. So I love that. I love that philosophy. So you published your first book at 15. Did you start cranking them out after that?
I did. I finished a 7-book series. It was like 1 or 2 a year. And then I'm at 27 now, but I don't remember what the dates were that I published them. I did an experiment where I published like a novella every single month for like 6 straight months. And it was like when the same month, like in that space, I graduated from college and started working full time. And I don't know why I did it like that particular 6 months, but I did. So I worked on my backlist and I was working on my craft and just trying to put out as much as I could to become better at it.
What did that teach you, putting out something so often, even during crazy times of life and everything? Like, what did you learn in the process of just the volume of content that you put out?
It was I realized that, it didn't have to be perfect was probably, like that's probably when I real that really clicked for me, and I realized that I was getting better. So, I realized that when you do something over and over and over again, you get to the point where you're able to do it without thinking about it. And so I would start realizing like, oh, this plot point doesn't make sense, or this character's development needs to be tidied up a little bit. And I started doing these things without having to consciously think about them as much. And so I just got better overall by just doing things like 80% of the way.
Yeah, I believe they call that honing your craft, right? Yeah, it is iterating on oneself and increasing your skill set and getting better, and it's a process of iteration, and like you said, at some point, some of these things started to become more ingrained and second nature, and so things that might have been a struggle before now, they're second nature. You just know, "Oh, I need to create this dynamic that's missing in the story to make it a better read," or whatever. Would you say that seems true?
Yes.
Yeah. So, you started getting better and better because you put out volume, and I actually think that that's sometimes the missing component for people is they think that they're gonna make some masterful piece of art or an ebook or whatever the thing is they do, and that's gonna be it's gotta be great right out of the gate, and that's the one thing, and that's the be all, and I think that's probably the greatest mistake. There's something to be said for doing a high volume of stuff, and there's no way around it except to just do the reps. You have to put in the reps to get better. I've written hundreds of songs as well, and so I've gotten better at songwriting and I allow myself I don't know if you have anybody you get feedback from where you bounce things off of and they'll give you, loving critique, but I have that in my life, like, I have a producer where I'll write something and he'll really tell me the truth about if it's good or not or if there's pieces I need to change, and I've come to really value that relationship. And, do you have somebody like that that you bounce off of?
I have an editor who gives me a lot of bad news. So I'm like, well, she's being mean to me, but she's right. So I'll
Yes.
keep paying her.
That's exactly that's the same relationship I have, right? At first, when I worked with my producer, he's German, by the way, and so I always find I don't know about all Germans, but with him, I find them very direct, like, very direct, which is in the end, I prefer it, right? And so my, soft little Canadian, ways at first, yeah, it was kind of like, "Oh my gosh, that was harsh." But then I thought, "Nope, if I wanna get better, bring it on." Like, I really wanna get better. I really wanna be a better songwriter, so please send me the feedback. So, that's awesome that you have that, and I think that that mentality, ultimately is what is leading to where you are today, which is really amazing, and we'll get there, and I just wanna lead people through the story of your process. So you put out a ton of content. You put out so many novellas. You said you're at like 27 now or something, published
I'm at
pieces, right?
27 books. I think there's like 10 novellas,
Oh gosh.
14 or something. Yeah.
It's a high volume, it's a high amount. And along the way, because obviously when you're immersed in that world and you were doing, you're a prolific writer, what were you doing back then to try and get readers? How do so I'm let me back up. How do authors who are independent and self-published, how do they typically try to build an audience? And were you trying to do it the way everybody else was doing it? Like, how did you approach that?
So the primary ways that I saw people, or like I did it, and the way a lot of authors still do it, is there's like Kindle Direct, and then there is Wide. Is that like the two streams of publishing that we have? And the Kindle Direct, you have to be exclusive to Kindle, and you can't publish the ebook anywhere else. But they give reads. There's like all the people who subscribe to Kindle Unlimited put the money in a big pot, And then, like, the pot gets distributed out based on what Kindle Unlimited readers read. But you have to be exclusive to Kindle to do that. And then there are the people who publish wide, which is where they publish to all the retailers, as many as you can. I tried being in Kindle Unlimited for a while, especially romance authors. A lot of romance authors, indie authors are in Kindle Unlimited, but I don't like committing my business to one business and like,
One channel.
I'm forever subject to Jeffrey Bezos, who I'm sure is a wonderful person. But the other alternative is to be wide on all the retailers. And what people who are wide usually do is that they have the first book in series free. And so I did that for a really long time as well. And then I finally, a lot of people download the book for free and they don't read it. So got to the point where I was like, I'm not going to give books away for free unless I get people to sign up for my mailing list first. And I did that for a while, but then I realized that like now I just get a list full of people who want freebies. So the first book free still, I think, works for some people from what I understand. But those were like the 2 methods I saw, and I tried both extensively. I couldn't make it work for me.
And that's kind of like the popular marketing methods still being recommended today in the author circles?
There is that. There's also a lot of, like, what is it? Amazon ads. People run Amazon ads within the platform of Amazon, and they run ads to the Amazon page, but it's all that I've found is centered on driving traffic to the retailers. So you don't have any data, you don't have any consumer data, and you don't
Mm.
actually know who's clicking and who's buying.
Okay, this is really important. This is huge. Okay, so you're seeing these 2 models so far. So running ads, doing Kindle Unlimited only, like kind of putting all their eggs in one basket, and also offering free book. Get the first book for free, and then what happens?
Then you try to sell them the rest of it on the retailers.
On the retailers. Okay. So, what are the biggest mistakes now looking back that you did and that you see other authors doing right now? Like
Well,
you
I
just
mean,
can't
if
say
it
you
makes them money, it makes them money, but it didn't work for me, and I didn't like that I couldn't, because like, I went and I looked outside the author space, I looked at what the e-commerce people were saying, and it's all about controlling your analytics, it's all about having your email list and actually knowing who's buying. So, I wanted to move to a direct sales model because it just made sense to me. Most authors that I talk to now don't want to do direct sales for various reasons, but I was like, if I want to do this long term and I don't want to have my business in the hands of some other retailer, I need to figure out how to do it. So that's why I decided to make the switch.
Yeah, and you mentioned data, and I think people really underestimate how important this is. If you want to, like you said, have control of your own business and not have your fate in other people's hands, like, oh, if the Amazon algorithms are working in your favor or not, that kind of thing. This is the exact same thing that people experience on Etsy as well. They think that being on a platform will automatically send them customers. And I always think of it like and it's the same with Amazon. It might be okay for discovery, but really bad for building a business for a number of reasons. One of the worst things is you don't have your own customer data. People who have purchased your product, you don't even have an email address. Now, I know that there's maybe other some semi sketchy ways or things you have to do to break the rules that you could probably get it, but that could get you banned, shut down, and there's a lot of risk to that, especially if you work hard to build up a base there. And so there's people now trying to get people off platform onto their own ecosystem. And so, it's the same I think it's the same thing with Amazon, it's the same thing with anywhere else. Customer data is your golden goose. You've gotta have that because any time that we're on rented land, they can take that from us. I mean, I see every week there's some huge creator with bazillions of followers and, Instagram just shuts them down because, "Oops, that was an accident," or whatever. It happens all the time. Sometimes they get their count back, sometimes they don't. So while I still believe in building up audiences on those platforms, the best thing we can do is to direct people off platform and get them into our own privately owned ecosystem. And that way, if anything happens, we always have a way to communicate, market, and etc. And so you're so smart for doing that. When did you first start really shifting people and like really working hard and getting them on your email list and then moving to that direct sales model?
Switched to direct sales in August 2022 is when I opened my store a few years ago. This isn't working, so let's try something else.
Yeah, absolutely. That was really smart. So, did you start out on Shopify?
Yes, I did. I mean, I had a WordPress site and I experimented with WooCommerce and I realized it just made more sense to just like the amount I pay in plugins, it'd be cheaper to just get Shopify.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same way about WooCommerce. All it's just like go to Shopify. The biggest brands in the world are using Shopify. There's a reason. So then at some point along your journey, you were doing your thing. You were on the path and you were starting to figure out some of these things. Before you and I met and before you discovered me and what I do, where were you at in that point of your career as an author? I know you were still working a day job, both you and your husband working a day job. Tell me a little bit, what did life look like at that point?
I was still working full time in middle management and marketing. And that continued until this year of March.
Yeah, no, because this is exactly it, and I think this is an excellent way. And when you say middle management, so what kind of job title did you have?
Deputy digital director was my official title.
Deputy. Okay, that's a first.
Yes, deputy, not assistant, deputy.
Was it like a big company or small mom and pop?
It was a consulting firm. So it
Okay.
was I think we had like 50 employees total.
Okay.
Was who so,
Yeah.
I had I think 3 people under me technically.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, you had something pretty solid there. And in the meanwhile, in the background, are you thinking at that time, I think I'm on the track where I really want to be able to quit my day job, or were you not in that headspace yet?
I've known that I wanted to be a full-time author since I was 15. So, even when I was at my day job, I looked at my day job as, like, research because like, I interact with all these different people, so, like, learning trying to understand other people, other minds.
That's amazing, by the way.
Like,
That
every
is so smart.
everybody in my day job knew that I wrote books. I told them about it. I write fantasy romance books. Everybody at my day job knew that Elizabeth did that. So, and they follow me. They still follow me, a lot of them on social media. So they knew.
I love that you took that opportunity because I always tell my students, like, if you can just become really fascinated by human behavior, become fascinated by psychology, you will get so good at selling and at sales. It's not even funny. And I love that you were taking the opportunity to just learn anything you could about people and like interactions, everything. That is so smart. That's why I'm saying you are so smart. I'm like, yeah. Okay. So you were there and then what was your audience size around that time as well? So this is back in 2022?
I think my mailing list was under 3,000 at that point. At the time I made the switch in 2022, I all people from the retailers. So it was all people who had either signed up because they were seeking freebies, clicked a link in the back of my ebook on the retailers and decided to sign up. But they were people who buy on the retailers. None of them had bought from me direct at that time. And maybe 2,300 Instagram followers. It was not a lot. It was under 5K.
Right. And what did income look like at that point? Was it really sporadic?
It was a I reported a $4,300 loss for 22 on my taxes, so I was like, it cost me money to publish that year.
Yeah. And how common do you think that is for self-published authors?
Very common. Like, most of us lose money on it. If you look at the number of people who have published, it's most of us are losing money, very few of us are making a living at it.
Yeah, and it's the same thing I've seen in the music industry. Because I mean, you probably know I have 7 Musician Academy or taught and you know that actually, I think that's how you discovered me is through my music. Was that am I correct?
Mhm.
Yeah. So I know this world and it's the same thing. Like people are putting out art, it's often well, and in the case of albums, you can spend tens of thousands of dollars on an album and make absolutely nothing if you don't have an audience. And I've dealt with that a lot or hoping like, oh, I don't know that radio is gonna do something for you. Like that's even a thing anymore. But I've talked to people who think it is. It's it's amazing how much sometimes the old system is very residual in the current day, and people don't realize what's changed and what they need to do differently. So you discovered me through my music, and then, we have some probably nerdy similar interests. And then how did we end up working together?
I think I was doing it was the creative CEO community.
Right, that was, like, my first iteration for what I wanted to do with Legacy Launchpad, but it was like I'm really busy right now, so I'll just do one little training a month, And so that's how it all
Mhm.
started. Yeah.
Yes. So, I saw you did that, and I was like, "I'll join that," because, I know like, publishing is very similar to music, and I had been listening to the Savvy Musician podcast, because, like, there is so much similarity and so many similar mindsets in the music industry versus the publishing industry, and I was like, "Well, if she can make it work for music, which seems to be even worse than publishing, like, I'm sure, like, I can glean something here." So I joined the early iteration.
Yeah. Okay. And so, and I thought that was awesome too, because, it is so similar. They're very similar models in, like, we talk about the artistry. There's an X factor. That's how we actually started this conversation, talked about that, but it wasn't part of this. The hard part about, I have this like epic program, and there are systems, there's processes, there's repeatable sales systems, there's, email sequences, all of this stuff, right? And I have the same thing in Savvy Musician Academy. It's like, here's your artist identity infrastructure. There's a mouthful, right? But you need an identity. You need to stand out of the crowd. Otherwise you're just a needle in the haystack, right? I have all these things and all these systems. If you do them, they'll work, except for one thing. The one thing is the X factor. The X factor actually comes down to one thing, which is called talent. And so the thing with Savvy Musician Academy that the model that we had with that was anybody could come in and join, right? But we didn't screen people for, is your music actually any good? And then there's also a bit of, when you're talking about art, it's a little subjective too. What I think is not any good, somebody else might think is brilliant, and so there's a little bit, that's the hard part. And so the same thing I imagine is exactly the same in the publishing world, where you could have someone follow the same protocols that you've done. We'll talk about some of the specifics in a minute, but there's an X factor there, which is the genre. There has to be a demand for it. There's got to be an audience that loves trying new things. The actual content itself has to be amazing and engaging. And here's the hard part I actually had a question for you about, which is, let's say you're super talented. Let's say that the material is actually amazing. How do you get new readers to read your stuff? Because it's not like a song that's 3 minutes long and someone can decide if they like it or not. How do you get people to consume your books without committing the next 12 hours? Like, what's your secret to that?
What is my secret? I talk to people. So I talk about my books like a reader when I'm actually marketing. I enjoy the stories, I enjoy the characters. And reader Elizabeth, the person, I tried to separate myself from it in that way. I just think about it like this is a story I really love, these characters I really love, and I'm going to talk about them the way I would talk about one of my other fandoms. I usually hook on whatever is unusual about a particular book. So I'm going to talk tomorrow about this. So many authors, especially now, are really hooked on trends. Enemies to lovers was a big thing, still is a big thing. Everybody's like, my book's enemies to lovers, enemies to lovers, enemies to lovers. And it's like, that's awesome. There's 200 other ones. So what's special about yours?
Exactly. And so you're tapping into what in this book is different from everybody else's, and how can I almost go against the grain in a.
That's the general principle. I'm not saying I'm the only one who's ever done it exactly the way I have, but I try to talk about the trend within the trend that is counter to the trend. If that at all makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And then we have to absolutely talk about this. Your content, you've turned into a content creator. And as that content creator, you have drawn so much attention to your books that now people, they like you. That you are building a personal brand. And Elizabeth Wheatley could now, you could release anything you want. You have this book goblin thing going on with the stickers, and I want to find out about the stickers because that was genius. But, you could do anything you want now because you've built a personal brand. But tell everybody a little bit about your content strategy, and, like, do you have a rhythm? Do you have content pillars? Like, how have you built that out? Because you've really got a big audience now. So first, before we go into that, what does your audience look like now? Like your email subscriber and your socials?
So I have 15,000 email list subscribers. It's somewhere around there. I think it is over 15,000 now. Then it was something you suggested. You suggested doing a feedback survey and then asking for emails. I got like 2,300 emails for free by doing that.
Oh my gosh.
I just gave people the store credit at the end of the survey, and everybody wanted that $5 store credit. And so I got, like I said, emails, and I did not spend any ad money on that. It was insane.
And how many people took you up on that $5 store credit?
I need to double check. I need to double check, but it was a lot of them saved it for the launch as well. The
Yeah.
launch that was this month. So I can double check that in a moment. But I have like 15,000 plus email subscribers. I have 225,000 YouTube subscribers or thereabouts now. I have 155,000 on Instagram and 120 something thousand on TikTok.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're on multiple platforms now, just like absolutely crushing it everywhere. So, I know you before you were just mostly focused on writing. And when did you start realizing, okay, I need to put out some more content and I need to put it out like on X, Y, and Z platform? When did that happen? Something must have happened.
It was July 23 last year, and my husband and I, like, we're newlyweds living in a kind of expensive city, and so we didn't have a lot of extra money, and so I was like, "Okay, well, I can't spend ad revenue right now, so I'll just figure out this content thing." Because, like, I have a phone. So I just decided I was going to figure it out. And I started posting I looked at the past year up to that point, and I realized that the videos that had done well had my face and my voice.
Ah,
So I was like, okay, I'm just going to post every single day with my face and my voice. And I did. And then it just kind of worked. So I think the first one I did, after I decided to do this, it was like I got like 300,000 views on it. And I was like, wow, that hasn't happened before. So I just kept doing it. And some videos flopped and some videos blew up. And here we are.
yeah, I would say so. And so, what's your rhythm? Do you just do one new one every day? How does that work?
I post every day, at least once. I mostly freestyle it unless I have a promotion coming up and then I do it more strategically. I do have content pillars where I try to space things out and plug certain things in. But for the most part, I just try to stay on topic. I just give myself a prompt.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, yeah, those are some of the things that we definitely go through. You just absolutely mastered it. You're so entertaining. I love that your quirk comes out, and that's what everyone's so drawn to, right? It's like you're not a cookie cutter like everybody else. And that's what I think people don't understand is they want to get to know you. Like you said, your face, your voice, that's what is resonating with people. And there's some good editing stuff like your quick jump cuts that works really well. So just taking out the ums and ahs, taking out that second before you actually start talking, things like that help keep people's attention really well. So you're doing such a good job with that. And yeah, you're absolutely brilliant. So everybody, if you're an author or you're just somebody in the arts, you have to go and follow Elizabeth to see what she's doing and her style. Like she's got this meme style and then ways of I just love it. You plug your book all the time. And I don't think people realize you need to do that. And you're doing it in fun, creative ways, but you're always plugging your book. It's like all roads lead to Rome, which is the books. And so you're doing that in the most amazing way. And so was that hard for you to get over? Was it difficult? You're like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm selling all the time. Was that difficult?
In the beginning, I read this book, Reach by Becky Robinson, and she talks about becoming your book's biggest fan. And I'm quite shameless in promoting other people's books. Like I don't have that same inhibition. So I do talk about other people's books that I like, but I just realized like I shouldn't feel bad about it. I'm not saying my book's better than all the other books that exist. I'm just saying, here's what I love about this book. And if you like it, you might like it too.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely brilliant the way you do that. And then and you're talking about all the things you like. So you're becoming a trusted source. People who like you like, yeah, I have the same tastes as her. I like listening to your commentary, your opinions on it, and it's almost like I'm getting recommendations. And obviously it draws a lot of attention. I'm sure these other authors really appreciate it as well. So when you came over to Legacy Launchpad, I'm just curious about what was your experience going through the program as a self-published author, and are there any aspects in there that you found fairly transformative?
I had taken several courses specifically tailored for authors prior. I did one that was actually on direct sales for authors prior, and I just was not able to make it work. And I think the part that I really appreciated was the emphasis on warming up audiences. So, like, everything I'd done prior to that teaches authors how to sell to cold audiences, and that's way harder to do. So I looked at like the whole goal of creating the content that I started, like the videos, was that I wanted to create a warm audience to send my launches to, my early bird VIP list to. So that was probably like the single biggest thing. Apart from that, it was just applying what's in the courses, like
Yeah.
actually doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's what the whole point of your content is doing, that is reaching cold people. Then they binge your content and now they're warm. And then they see the next thing from you and she's talking about, a deep dive survey or whatever it is that you're promoting. And now they're in your ecosystem. Now they're in your world. They're on your email list and now they're getting your promotions and bada bing, bada boom. So, this is how it works, right? And you're just doing it flawlessly. So, can you share some of the mind blowing results that you've been experiencing? What does life look like now?
So I got, we did like, what was it? Our Black Friday thing was probably last year when I realized, like, oh, I can make a living at this. I didn't have, like, this series wasn't complete yet. And even with it not being complete yet, we did like, I think it was like 17 over the early bird period, or like the first 2 days, it was like 17K. And it shocked me because I had not thought that I could. And then it got out of hand and I was planning to work through the rest of this year at my day job. But in February, I was looking at my husband. I'm like, we're selling too many books.
The sales got out of hand.
And then when this happened, I was like, I have to do this. So I left my day job in March and we were planning again to have my husband work through the whole year. But it was like, I couldn't keep working on the sales and his job. And he was working full time still. And I was like, why don't you work for me? And he's like, I want to work for you. And I'm like, okay, you can work for me. And then we just had our launch, which was the biggest launch ever. And we out earned like what my husband and I were making at the time in a year. Like I out earned my yearly salary in one day, the day of our launch. And for the rest of this month, we've like more than doubled that.
So you doubled what you did. So first of all, break down the launch for us. It was like, how long was the launch and what were you selling?
So I don't have it around here, but it was my latest book, which is a companion novel to the complete series. So I do think that was important because people are much more likely to buy a complete series. We had a lot of first-time customers who bought the complete series, and also a bunch of repeat customers who wanted the new covers because we did a new cover for the launch. But I have been talking about this book for the past few months and since June. Since June is when I think I started talking about it, and just sporadically. And then I went for 14 days before the early bird VIP period, and it was a week before the regular launch. So you could get access like a week before everybody else. And before the day of the early bird VIP launch, I spent 15 days. It was 15 days. And I just posted about every single video I posted had something to do with this book, had something to do with this launch, called people to sign up for it, like every single post. And I
Yeah.
was so sick of posting about it by the end, but it paid off. So we had, I think, it was over 5,000 people signed up to be early bird VIPs. We had like 1,000 orders in the first day, I think.
Gracious.
And the average order value was 53, almost $54. So the upper five figures.
Oh yeah.
Um,
And that was just in the early bird phase, right?
that was the first day of the early
Of your
birds.
So this is a page out of the launch recipe that I have inside Legacy Launchpad. And I was just telling our students, I don't know if people realize what that's worth, that one lesson, that one recipe, because this is the kind of thing that it can produce. So you just produced a high five figures in a single day on the first day of your early bird window. That's not even available to the public yet. Okay, so continue. What happened after that?
We sold out of our highest priced item in like 2.5 hours. So I sent an email out to the mailing list telling them we're out of stock, but we'll take pre-orders for the restock.
Smart.
And
Smart.
then they sold out by the end of the day as well. So we had to restock. I was talking to my husband and we're like, we're probably going to have to raise the price on the signed bundles because that's something that we have to pack ourselves. So I kept it at the same price for the remainder of the early bird. I don't think that one's sold out yet. The restock it's sold out. Most people, like the two most commonly purchased items were the ebook, which was $8, and then our highest priced item, which was 119. So those were our top 2 selling items, and then also a sticker pack of Book Goblin. So a lot of people wanted Book Goblin. I did also pair Book Goblin, which is like this character I have. We had 2 new merch designs of Book Goblin that were launching at the same time as this launch. So some people who didn't want the book, just want a Book Goblin, they signed up as well to get the early bird, but then they usually ended up buying at least an ebook as well. So I paired it with a new book launch, new covers, new merch, and signed bundles of books, and giving people lots of options of things to buy based on what they told me they wanted in the feedback survey.
Right. Yes, and that's another really important thing. I don't think people realize there's some secret sauce behind this whole thing, which is the deep dive survey that, I actually give you guys, the students, my deep dive survey as a template, which you go in and change it, make it, work for you and the questions that are relevant. But that is the gold mine. That is the golden goose because there's two aspects to that, and I'll get into surveys at another time, but it is such an insightful tool that's free that tells us what they want. And then our job is to give people what they want. For you, with an author, it's not like books aren't something that people run out of and have to purchase again. So you always have to have new drops, right? So new merchandise, like you said, new covers, maybe painted edges or whatever they call that. I don't know what that's called. New versions. And musicians do the same thing. They come out with a new mastered version or a new color of the vinyl record. You know what I mean? Like they have a special 10th anniversary edition. They come out with new versions of the same thing because there's only so much you can do with the existing asset, right? And then you come up with new merchandise, digital versions of things, and then you have this little character sticker pack. And how many people bought that sticker pack? Because when you and I were talking last, I was like, you have one. Where's the other 16 of the same character? Like people want I guarantee it, they're gonna want multiple versions of Book Goblin stickers.
We only have 3 versions of the most common product. 200 people close to it on the first day bought that sticker pack. Like, this one's been the favorite so far. It's Hala is the most common one. We were able to open up our sales to the European Union, and we figured out Canada because we're good with Manitoba now. So, we're able to ship to Canada now as well.
Yeah, that's really good. Gosh, to dig into. So that was your VIP. What by the time that whole launch ended, what were you looking at in terms of total, closed cart? Where did we end up at?
We did 6 figures during our 7-day launch period. I was kind of shocked. I sent out early bird access with the locksmith link with like the secret links people can
Yeah.
access. I
Yeah.
sent that out at 6 a.m. my time. And my husband has the Shopify app and he doesn't mute his phone. And so we wake up and it's just going ding, 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 ding.
I think this is still sinking in for me. You just said you did six figures in a 7-day period.
Yes.
That is insane.
Yeah.
Just think like 2 years ago or even a year ago. It was less than a year ago that you had that first Black Friday where you made your first 17K, and before that it was what, 5,000 a month or something?
No, I think I was able to make like 3K a month. 5K was like a good month. And that was before expenses.
Oh my
So
gosh.
and it was in 22, it was like I said, a $4,300 loss for the year. So
You just did a six-figure launch in a week. That is I can't even like I can't that's still sinking in for me. That is so incredible. I knew it was going well, which is why I'm like, people need to hear about your success. Like this is going to give authors so much hope and other creatives as well who are kind of in the similar position. But like this exceeded anything I even realized. Like, okay, so now looking back at this launch, which is so incredible, what do you think you'll change next time, if anything? Or is it just a matter of I just gonna keep doing exactly what you've been saying to do and I'm just gonna grow my audience?
I'm going to stock more. We are working on Black Friday doing a signed hardcover set, and that's we're probably going to have that's going to be like our highest ticket item ever. So, but we're going to like do super limited run of them. So we'll see how that goes. Our living room's only so big.
You just downplay everything so much, I love it. You were a very understated, very casual person, but I think it's so genius what you've done, and of course, I always say to people, "You're the one who's done the work. You already had talent. You had already determined that you wanted to do this, right? Whether we had worked together or not, you would have been successful. I don't doubt that. But sometimes people just need a little bit of strategy. They just need a little bit of a framework, things that they can grip onto and run with. That's what I see that you've done. It's like this whole launch recipe, this VIP strategy, the build up, the deep dive surveys, and then building out your merchandise, your product suite, and your customer journey. All of these things. And then there's a bunch of metrics I gave you as well to increase. These are the things that go from 3K month to a six-figure launch to a seven-figure year. I truly believe you're going to be a seven-figure author in no time flat. It's going to happen. You are on your way. You
Thank
know
you.
that, right?
Yes,
It's like you just did. So and was it like a single six figures or was it like a multiple six-figure thing?
there was. I think it came in at like 118.
Yeah, so all you have to do is increase your audience size and keep doing what you're doing. You're gonna figure out a few more things along the way, increase average order value and finding ways to get a little higher tiers and things like that. It's gonna happen. You are absolutely on your way. So, this couldn't be more exciting. I am celebrating you and your husband too. I know he's been helping with a lot of the work on the back end.
He
Um,
has.
how do you balance the marketing side with the creative writer? Because you are still a writer, and I understand this from a creative perspective in that there's two sides of our brain. There's that the bat cave and get creative and we shut out the world. And so how do you find switching between the artist side of you, the writer, and the marketer? Is that difficult or you just like don't worry about it?
I don't find it difficult. Like, I've always been fascinated by business. I mean, I know a bunch of creatives just heard that and went, "Damn it." But my degree was like half English, half business. Like, that's how they let me build a custom degree. I find business fascinating because business is just people with math. It's like I like math and I find people fascinating. So that's pretty much what business is. So I don't feel like it's an issue for me.
Which is that's the secret sauce right there because I think a lot of creatives I talk to a lot of creatives because they ask me that question, "How do you deal with the art and the b" To me, it's two sides of the same coin. And I think if you make it an issue, it becomes an issue. So it's really refreshing to hear you say, "I don't feel like it's an issue. I'm just doing my thing and promoting it and people like it and the people who want it buy it and they don't want it, they keep scrolling." Like this is so refreshing. People need to hear this that it's not actually a big deal.
I think a lot of creatives have an issue of like they associate business with being dirty,
Totally.
like immoral in some way. I didn't see business as dirty. It's you provide a solution for in exchange for currency. So I if it's a consensual exchange, I don't see what's wrong with it. So
Yeah.
I think that's actually I suspect, I can't prove, but I suspect that's what's actually the problem versus just not being able to switch into business mode as much. So, for at least some people.
Yeah, I agree with that. So it sounds to me like, did you have any money mindset issues growing up or that you were self aware of as an adult, or did you just not really have those to overcome?
I did have things to overcome. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, so I had a lot of poverty mindsets I had to reprogram. I did like this one coaching thing for like a year that was helpful for high level stuff. It didn't teach me the granular stuff I need to learn, but it did help me with the high level stuff and just the way I thought about money and the way I thought about business. And so I found that very helpful, where it's like money follows value, just thinking of it that way. Like money follows value. So be a person of value and you'll
Right.
attract money by serving people. I think a lot of like your audience is Christian. A lot of Christians really struggle with
Totally.
this as well. Like they think money is the root of all evil. I was like, no, why shouldn't I have the money? I was able to make the largest charitable donation of my life. The money comes to me, like God can put it where he wants. I owe it to the world to make money so that I can give it away.
I love that. Yeah, and especially, I mean, it's you and your husband too, and just think of what you'll be able to do one day if you guys ever have a family or you have extended relatives now. I mean, there's been so many situations where we find ourselves like a relative has a health crisis or something, and the ability to be able to take care of people, the ability to be able to give to those, my husband and I've been able to give as well to people that we love and care about and ministries we love and care about. And it feels amazing when you're able to do that. And so, I mean, that's a really good feeling, and just knowing that, hey, God's gonna put that money where it needs to go. So that's incredible. And now you were just telling me you hired your mom, she's packing books in the living room right now. That's incredible. I
Part
love that.
time. But yes,
Yeah.
like my mother is also able to work with me. So like we get money into the rest of the family that way. And it's like I'm the oldest, and so like I have younger brothers, and if one of them needs money, I can take care of them. So I don't think God wants us to be poor.
I don't either. And it says that the Bible does say the poor will always be with us, but that doesn't mean that that has to be your chosen path, right? Because some things I absolutely believe that God gives us choices. We have a choice. So just like in the parable of the talents, it wasn't the guy's destiny to bury the talent in the sand. Or it wasn't his destiny to do that. He wasn't destined for that and to be condemned for it either. That was a choice he made based on a limiting belief that he had. He had a fear mentality of losing it. And so any risk at all, he just buried it and was actually condemned really harshly for that at the end. So, there's always going to be a measure of risk in what we're doing. There's always going to be a measure of putting ourselves out there, being willing to look dumb, being willing to have videos flop, being willing to test stuff and it not work. It happens to me all the time. People just don't see it. They see the successes, they don't see all the trial and error. And that's the key. So, one of my last questions for you is like, what would you recommend to other authors listening to this? Like, what's your advice for them? What should they do next?
Oh, well, that depends where they are. You need to have something to market first. So, right. And I think related to that is read. So a lot of authors, I realize they don't read a whole lot, and I think that we should consume the art we create, or at least the art form. And then the other thing would be to, how do I word this? It doesn't have to be the way you've been told it has to be. So a lot of times in the publishing industry, we have people who are very dogmatic, or like, you have to do this, you have to get an agent, you have to get a publisher, you have to get like, here's the step-by-step formulas. I once had a mentor tell me, like, don't take advice from someone you wouldn't trade places with.
Mm,
So if someone is not getting a result that you like, don't take their advice. And there's a lot of that in the author help space where people who maybe don't have quite the results you'd want to have are giving a lot of advice. So I try to make sure always that I'm seeking out people who are more successful than me, are more knowledgeable in some area, and that at least in the area I'm taking their advice, I would trade places with them. So, that's probably, like, the simplest principle I could give to authors who are starting out.
yeah, absolutely. So find people who are more successful than you and learn what they're doing. Learn from people. I call that just taking a shortcut and learn the mistakes vicariously rather than having to do them all yourself. Like to me, that's the smart way to do it. And so I've always had coaches and mentors as long as I could afford to have them. And the minute I could afford it, like my first big investment, I took some smaller courses that kind of, it was like I was already determined to succeed and I just needed a little strategy to get me going that kind of helped a bit. But my first big investment was a $20,000 investment with a coach. And I think at the time when we got that, I was maybe around the $200,000 mark. That catapulted me to seven figures in the next 4 or 5 months. That because I already had the determination. I already had the belief. I had the vision, but I didn't have just a few of these strategies, that I could go on to and run with. And that's what you're doing now. And so I think that that's the smartest thing. And I love that advice for authors. And so do you feel like this program could also be helpful to other authors, or is it just you that is amazing at taking stuff and applying it to what you're doing?
I mean, if they're willing to apply it, I don't see why not. That's probably the biggest weakness of any course, is that it requires you to apply it. So, I
It's a
think
challenge.
that's
Yeah.
sounds mean, But there are a few authors I wish would take it. I would love it if they would take it, but like I said, you have to apply it. So a lot of authors are really stuck on thinking of books, and they don't like thinking of them as an e-commerce product.
Yeah, same with musicians. They're exactly the same, and they wanna, like, set it and forget it. Like, "I just wanna make the art. I'll hire an agency to do the marketing for me. I'm not gonna worry about that." And if you look at it more as building a personal brand instead of, "I'm an author," they got their head space in a little box about that. And if they just remove the box and, like, "I'm building a personal brand," what do people who build personal brands do? They do X, Y, and Z. And it's an e-commerce product, but I'm the brand. It's your personality. It's your writing. No one can replace you. Someone can even try to knock you off. Then it'll never be the same because it's you. And so if you look at it that way, I 100% agree with what you're saying there. And it transform your approach. And that's where the results are on the other side of that. And that's exactly what you've done. So my gosh, I'm so excited for you. I want to keep coaching you because the potential is insane. You're like the next Brandon Sanderson Kickstarter campaign in the making. So, and if anybody doesn't know who that is, because I honestly haven't read that many of his books, but he did he's a fantasy author. He's been creating his audience for decades, so he has a super loyal following, and he has a world record for the biggest Kickstarter, I think, of all time. And it was like he launched it during COVID, I think it was 2022 or something like that. It was over $40 million for a Kickstarter campaign for books. They're just books. And they had different book packages, but, and there was a subscription that got rolled out. It was like a quarterly thing for a year, whatever, but there's just books. And it was just like the most insane thing. And I was studying that Kickstarter campaign like crazy because I was like, this is genius. Who is this guy? And why is he so successful? And so I just seen, he has built a personal brand. That's what it is. Sure, it's an author. Put the label author on it, but it is a personal brand. And so now he's done that. So I see you as somebody who's going to do that level of stuff in the years to come. So, huge congratulations from me and Steve, by the way. We are cheering you on, you and your husband, your family. I can't say how ecstatic I am for you. And I just love seeing, lives transform. And if I have anything to do with it, I am absolutely over the moon, so happy. So yeah, but ultimately, you're the one doing it. So huge congratulations. Where can people learn more about you? Where would you recommend they go first if they're like, okay, I want to learn more about her. I want to learn about her books. Like, where should people go?
So my website is elizabethwheatley.com, but the easier to spell one is fantasyromance.com. So that will take you to the same place.
Yeah, I love that. You said, my husband bought me that domain, fantasy romance. That was like, was that a present or something? It
It
wasn't
was
the cheapest domain.
No, it wasn't, but it was one of those things where, like, he's been talking about it since, like, I think we got married. It was, like, right after he's like, "It's for sale," and then we were finally able to, like, get it. Yes, it was his
Fantasy
idea, and
Fantasyromance.com. Okay, that's epic. That's really good. Really good SEO keyword search terms right there. Thank you so much for spending your time with me and for sharing your story, your success. And I'm sure people are going to find this incredibly inspiring and reach out to you and start following you and have questions for you. But I appreciate your time and it's been my pleasure to be able to speak into your life in any capacity. So thank you for that. Thanks for letting me come along the journey.
thank you. You've helped a lot.
Oh, thanks so much. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in today. Don't leave just yet. I've got two things. Number one, if you enjoyed this content, if this was of any value to you, please leave me a review and share with a friend. This content is 100% free, so that's like leaving me a tip and it's going to encourage us to keep making it. Number two, if it's your desire to build your own family legacy and you want some help, send me a DM on Instagram with the word podcast, and I've got something special for you. Again, DM me with the word podcast at Real Leah McHenry on Instagram. We'll see you next time.